I think we're in a position where we can start, but unfortunately we are not completely quorate. We're waiting for one more member to make us quorate so that we can sign off the final paper. What we will be doing is going through the two items, the cover report and the Grant Thornton one, and taking questions on the actual auditor's annual report, but not actually voting for it because we're not quorate, therefore we can't take any decisions. So to start the meeting off, can I ask members to actually introduce themselves and test the microphones to make sure they're working, because that's very important for the webcast.
Councillor Toby Simon, Bath and North East Somerset Council.
Adrian Rush, South Gloucestershire.
Jennifer Whitten, independent member. Paula O'Rourke, Bristol City Council.
Tim Rippington, Bristol City Council.
Dave Addison, South Gloucestershire.
Don Blenkinsop, Bristol City Council.
John Leach, Bath and North East Somerset.
And I'm David Wilcox, chair of this committee from Bristol City Council. Can I ask the officers to introduce themselves, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bob Brown. I'm the Director of Legal Services and Monitoring Officer.
Hi, I'm Rachel Musson. I'm the Section 73 Officer.
Hello, Tim Milgate. I'm a Democratic Services Officer.
Solange Russell, Director of Finance.
Steve Finnegan, Financial Accountant.
Hi, I'm Barry Morris, the Key Audit Partner for Grant Thornton.
Hi, and Liam Royal, the Audit Manager of Grant Thornton.
I've had apologies so far from Councillor Hucker, Christine Fraser and Mark Hatcliffe. Other people have not sent their apologies, which is useful, or not, as the case may be. Does anybody have any declarations of interest that they need to raise for this meeting? No? Great, thank you very much. So we can't approve anything, but does anybody have questions about? Okay, yes, let's do Grant Thornton's introduction now.
So we'll introduce the audit findings report. Thank you very much, Chair. So our audit of the authority's financial statements is nearly complete. So that's why we're gathered here today to approve the financial statements. Should be approving the financial statements. I do just need to bring to members' attention there is, as we highlighted in the report, one piece of information that is still outstanding, and that relates to the letter of assurance from the Avon Pension Fund. Now, we're unable to conclude the audit until that has been received, and what that does is it gives us assurance over the valuation of the pension fund assets. Now, what we would normally do, and this is often the case when we come to committees like this, we would ask for delegated authority. So as long as there are no material changes as a result of that work, and again, at the moment we don't have any indication that there are, but that work is still ongoing, then we would look for the accounts to be approved, and then any amendments could be made unless they were material, in which case we would bring it back to a future audit committee. So we have gone through the audit. So it says on the report that the subject to finalisation of the partner review. So I have completed my review of all the work that I can, as has the safeguarding partner that's been introduced. So we had to have a safeguarding partner this year because this is my 7th year as the audit partner involvement in the audit. And again, all of the issues that have been raised by him have been addressed. There have been a number of changes to the financial statements as a result of our audit work. And there's been some late developments as well around a curious thing called IFRIC 14, which relates to pension fund assets. We're always used to deficits in the pension fund liability, but there have been some developments there that the authority has responded to. So I'll hand over to Liam to take you through, in summary, the report.
Yes, thank you. So largely, I'll take the report as read. I think just picking up a couple of highlights. Barry mentioned IFRIC 14. Some of you may look at the accounts and go, we don't have a pension asset. There's a a technical point that was raised recently about positions where the authority is making deficit contributions, where you may end up with an asset in the future, which you may not be able to recognise in full because you can't withdraw from the fund. You'd never actually get that back. So there's a possibility it's basically sort of paying in more than you get out in simple terms. And so that assessment needed to be made, and that came to the attention of us and then to officers quite recently. Hence why in the report it says it's outstanding. That has now come back to us, and it was an immaterial impact for the combined authority. So there's been no changes as a result of that. The other significant areas are around the recommendations, and Barry mentioned that there were quite a number of changes to the accounts. It's page, where are we? 25 of our report, the action plan. And I just wanted to draw members' attention to this because there's a couple of different kind of cross-cutting issues here which have come up for a number of years now, hence why we've raised these recommendations. You'll see the first one there with a high-risk assessment. That's around a number of creditor balances that weren't accrued in the prior period, where we've had to request that a prior period adjustment be made because they materially misstated the prior year accounts. Where these items of expenditure were included in 23-24, it should have been included in 22-23. The reason we raised this as a recommendation this year and kind of given it that high risk assessment is this is the 4th year in a row that we've had similar kind of creditor accruals missed, and for 2 of those last 4 years we've had to request prior period adjustments be made because they were material to the prior period and obviously then the current period as well. We do understand there's a lot of complications in terms of the combined authority's expenditure and the way that is quite often being done in partnership with constituent authorities or other grant recipients. But it really shouldn't be the case that every year, significant balances are being missed and that prior period adjustments are being required to account for some of those. And so we've made that recommendation again. The accruals process really must improve, and if it requires working with the constituent authority or the grant recipients to make that work better, some thought needs to be given to how to make that function, basically. And we understand all the reasons behind why these things are difficult, and certainly I agree, it's a complex bit to monitor, but we can't keep issuing PPAs every year. Like, that's not how this should function. And then the second point that you can see there is about classification errors. Again, the reason we've raised this is that it's come up a number of times across the years, certainly all the years that I've been involved with the audit of the combined authority. There's sort of 3 different balances around creditors, grants received in advance, and the agency liability, where WECA is, say, the accountable body or is looking after monies that properly belong to other bodies who are the principal recipients of, say, that grant funding. And every year we find that there's things that are either not disclosed properly within those notes or that are kind of classified as a creditor when they're actually part of the agency or they're a grant receipt in advance. Although these are technical differentiations, they do sometimes make it very difficult to understand which balances actually belong to the authority and what the nature of them is. And so again, just ironing out these issues around the quality of those disclosures and the preparation of those disclosures will be really helpful. And I know the management's response there, they're going to introduce reconciliations around grant receipts in advance in particular. I think that'd be a really helpful step to amending that. And then the third rec is just around the journals, and I believe management's response is on the first one, it's a relatively small finance function. This is kind of how it has to work. That is often the case for organisations of this size. And in the second case about self-authorisation of journals, that's been addressed and corrected. And just to draw that to your attention. Following that, there's one follow-up on a prior recommendation about disclosure around officer remuneration. There was one omission here. There was a question of timing around the appointment of the Assistant Chief Executive that's been rectified. Again, just really important to get that disclosure right because it is an area of key interest particularly for users of the accounts and for the wider public. But we do know that was better prepared this year than in the prior year. And then there's a number of adjustments following on Appendix D. Largely, again, as I said, I'll take these as read because there's a lot of detail of various bits and pieces of disclosure changes. I just wanted to mention on page 27, we have what look like very small or nil adjustments. It's because the authority recognises expenditure and then recognises income from grants receipts to match that. So there's no overall effect on the accounts, but it does mean the gross balances can be materially misstated, hence why they're included here. It hasn't changed anything about the bottom line or the reserves or anything else, but it's about the numbers on either side of that go into net off together. Beyond those, the only thing to mention is just around the fees disclosures on page 33. Members will note 2 additional fees included. Firstly, around quality and preparation issues. That was particularly around this issue around the grant receipts in advance and the credits and notes, where the initial disclosures obfuscated a couple of answers we needed to test, and so there was additional work required. And then a small variation around IFRIC 14 and the additional work required around that in order to get assurance over that. Nothing else from me, but happy to take any questions from members.
Toby?
Thank you. A couple of comments. Firstly, on pensions, seems to me there's quite a lot of duplicative work. I mean, I'm a member of the Avon Pension Funds Committee. Grant thought of the auditors there, and yet you're having to do work again in relation to the pension liability of this authority. And it seems to me that some simplifications and getting SIPFA to have a look at what audit is needed of pension arrangements might be a good idea. The second is just a comment on the journals question. My previous authority was defrauded of £500,000 by a senior finance officer who had journaling powers. So I'm very sensitive to keeping adequate controls on journals.
Thank you. So through the chair, so you're absolutely right around the pension fund in making sure that we're efficient in the way that we deliver that work. So there is no duplication of work. So that's the bit that's holding us up, is the letter of assurance from the pension fund auditor. Now, the pension fund auditor will typically focus on the valuation of the assets and the investments. So that's the bit that they do, and that's what they give us assurances over. So we don't need to do any work on that. Then our work will look at the liability side, so looking at the inputs and the pension drawdowns that will be taken from the future. So I can assure you that there is that audit efficiency in place, so we don't look at the same things, but that's why it's sort of outside of our control in relation to waiting for the pension fund auditor to provide us those assurances. And again, one of the reasons for the delay in getting that information is just the valuation of some of the investments that the pension fund has. Like many, they have investments in companies, and those companies' audit or financial years may not correspond to the 31st of March, which is when we prepared the accounts. So we're reliant upon those companies' external auditors providing audit opinions that we can then rely on the robustness of those valuations. It is an area that we need to, I think further work is required on, because we can't be in a position, if we're going to ever reset the system, that we're waiting for third-party assurances, and that's why we're doing alternative procedures around that. In relation to the journals, you're absolutely right. That's why we've identified it as management override control. That's why we undertake the work. There are quite a lot of detailed procedures that we undertake. We look at all revealed transactions, and then we subject them to a range of digital audit and IT processes to make sure that we can identify any unusual journals. And there's a range of characteristics. We tell officers what some of those are. We don't tell them what all of them are, so that there's that element of unpredictability there, so that we can find that. But yeah, thank you.
Councillor Leach.
Thank you, Liam, for your summary there. The first 2 items you mentioned come across as a bit of a slap across the wrists for WEPA. I just wonder what response you've had in response, from WEPA in response to those, whether that response is the same as the response you've had for the previous times that you've raised the issue, and whether you're satisfied.
Thank you, Councillor. So clearly there's a formal response in the report around some of what management plans to do about those things. I think in discussions with management, they're obviously aware of the issue. They're aware of the need to improve these processes, but there is also the understanding of the challenge of doing that sometimes when management are relying on some of the third-party reporting from the grant recipients. What we're really talking about here is there is a pot of money that the combined authority is allocated to a project, and they the third party will then report what they've spent against that grant and then drawn down against it. So often what the combined authority is waiting for is that understanding from the third party of how much have they spent, how much are we accruing for in terms of our expenditure, because it's not the whole amount of the grant yet, it's the specific that we're going to get claimed on. And so if the claims from the third parties are either inaccurate or not made or are late, it's often very difficult for the authority to correctly get those accruals together. That said, there are things that you would hope could be done on those in terms of the ongoing monitoring. Is it a case of doing it earlier? Is it a case of more engagement? Is there something that can be done to the process in terms of communicating with those grant recipients of, we need to have this information as accurate as possible, so we need to get it from you as early as possible and in as complete detail as we can. And that's really what we're waiting for. And I think that's something that we can take into further discussions with management as well around how do we approach that, or how do they approach that in terms of making sure that that accruals process is as complete as it can be.
Does that mean then that you're expecting that you'll have a similar comment to make in a year's time and in 2 years' time?
I would hope not. It really depends on what the progress is from now until March, recognising there's 6 months of the year to work on that process, and then the accounts prep period in 2025 to action that. You would hope that's a good amount of time to be able to improve that or do something about it.
Yeah, and if I might comment, so yeah, as Liam said, we do rely on third parties for the information around that, and the majority of that comes from our constituent unitary authorities. So we work hard with our colleagues in the UAs to try and get the information that we need on time, but unfortunately they don't always provide that. So whilst we do what we can to push and make that really clear that we need it for our audit purposes, it's not something we can make somebody do. So we will continue to do that. We will continue to provide them the feedback from the audit recommendations so that they understand the impact that it has on the combined authority as a whole. Solange, I don't know if you want to comment any further on the other points.
And it's just to back up that all the claims for grants are in arrears. So there's always a quarter in arrears. So the UAs themselves and third parties are always waiting in their own respect to collate the information before they can send it across to us. But we will continue to try our best to look at this process and see how we can improve it.
So I'm going to ask a question on that. As representatives of our own unitary authorities at this meeting, do we need to encourage the unitary authorities to actually report quicker and better?
We would very much welcome your support in doing that.
I will let members take that one on board then, please, because I think Tim and I will certainly be pushing that from Bristol's perspective. Thank you very much. Any other questions for Grant Thornton while we're here, please? So I'll take that one as done. Do we want to discuss we would like to discuss the auditor's annual report. And Solange, Barry wants to do that. Okay, cool.
Thank you, Chair. Interesting use of the word wants to do that. I will do that. So members, this is a position statement for the auditor's annual report for 23-24. Now, I'm conscious that at the last audit committee meeting, we spent a considerable amount of time going through the 22-23 auditor's annual report and the subsequent governance review. So this report has basically been updated to reflect the findings from that report. Now, clearly, to be fair to the authority, that was only finalised about a month ago, so it would be fairly unfair to expect them to jump in their time machines and go back and address the issues before we've reported it. What we have done is we've confirmed that there are no new recommendations in relation to our 23-24 review, and we have closed one of the statutory recommendations in relation to the conflicts of interest regarding the severance and the rationale for the award of the severance payment. And we've also closed another one of the key recommendations in relation to the future management structure of the combined authority as well. We will continue to keep that under review. The fact that we've closed it as a key recommendation doesn't mean that we stop looking at it, and we will update our commentary in relation to 24-25 to make sure that the anticipated progress has been made. So the authority continues to be on a journey in relation to the recommendations that we've raised in prior years, and we will monitor the effectiveness of that journey in our 24-25 report. So I'll leave it there, but happy to take any questions that you may have on this year's report.
Thank you, Barry. Any questions for Barry about that particular year, please? Looks like you're okay with that one, Barry. Thank you. Now, can we go on to the statement of accounts? And is Steve doing that? Or Solange?
I'll introduce it. So so this sort of follows the report that Liam updated on for the audit findings report. So so we were intending to present the statement of accounts to sign off today. Just as a reminder, Steve Finnegan went through the key messages and highlighted all the main changes in an informal briefing earlier this month. And the draft has been on our website since June, and we reshared a version of the draft with you. So we are now just happy to take any comments you have on the final statement of accounts today.
Thank you, Solange. So does anybody have any questions that they would like to raise about this? I have a couple. On page 91, there's a table that lists expenditure and surplus. And I was interested in why the line about supplies and services seems to be massively underspent. What was the reason for it not being spent to the budget, please?
So this table is also being represented in our outturn position. So it's already in the public domain, and it reflects the fact that a number of the projects have seen spend reprofiled into future years, hence a reduction.
So no projects were not completed.
It's reprofiling.
Right, okay, that's good to hear. Anybody else got any more questions? I've got a couple more. On page 158, there's a line about His Majesty the King's coronation and Eurovision 2023. It's only £5,000, but I'm interested in what role the combined authority had about the King's coronation, because I assumed that all the unitary authorities would be doing all the ceremonial stuff. And I'm interested to find out how much we actually spent on Eurovision 2023, because there was some interesting press around at the time about how Bristol had only spent £70.42 on their bid, and I'm wondering what Wecker did, please.
So spend on Eurovision, I'd have to take away and send to the committee. So I'd have to go and find out. And the coronation, and I'd have to check this. I'm quite sure we received a grant which we gave out. Yeah.
This table is the 5,000 that we received in respect of both of those. It doesn't show the expenditure against that grant or where that grant went to. It just notes that we received £5,000 in revenue.
Right.
But that might be a detail in terms of what we spent on it or what we did with that grant that we would need to take away and come back.
I can take away and come back.
Thank you, Solange. That'd be great. Thank you. One more question about page 132. Sorry, 168. No, actually 132 is right, Ryan. The increase in agency creditors on point 22. There is some explanation, but I wonder if we could have some more detailed information about what was going on there, because there does seem to be some discrepancies. 132 is the right page that I've got.
132.
Yeah.
Not this one.
That's where the explanation is, but the actual reference comes from page 122. Sorry, 132. Oh no, I've got that one. Pardon me.
I think it's the table on page 166, the agency creditors. Can you just clarify what that's for?
Yeah, table on 132. So there was a spend of 15 million, but it was restated as 48 million.
Just bear with us while we try and find the table, because we're both struggling to find the reference.
Page 52 of the yeah, 132 of the big bundle, 52 of your report. Increase in agency creditors.
It's the cash flow. I think it's the difference between the years. So it's note 22.
Yep.
At the back end of the 23-24 accounts in March, we accrued almost £17 million worth of LEP creditors based on the green energy grants expenditure we were expecting and had not received. Creditors. It's actually accrued expenditure.
I think that makes it slightly plainer, but thank you.
Yeah, it's across our social decarbonisation housing products.
Right, thank you. So I believe we're at the position where we would have voted for this, but we can't because we're not quorate. So I'm going to defer to Rachel, who's going to tell us what the process is now.
So I am just checking in the background, so just to see if the councillor was available, but we can't get hold of anyone to know. So I think the appropriate route would be to adjourn this meeting at this point. So therefore, everything that you've done this morning is banked. This afternoon, thank you. And then we will need to reconvene once we have chorusy and the final point from the pension would make sense as well. And then we'll need to reconvene just for that final point on that, to take any final questions on the accounts and then hopefully approve. Unfortunately, we have no option on that.
So I'm just looking to see when the next programmed meeting is going to be.
I think that will be too late. I think we will need to put in another additional meeting, unfortunately, because that's going to be quite a way away. Barry, I don't know if you're able to just comment. Obviously, once we've missed the statutory deadline, obviously the soonest past the deadline is the better. But I don't know if you want to comment at all.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm just reflecting on the word deadline. So our current intelligence is that there's possibly one authority that may be signed by the deadline of today across all of local government, and that's one of ours that we're trying to get over the line, but is still looking a little bit dodgy. I'm not sure when the next audit committee is scheduled to be. I agree it would be great to get this one
2nd of December.
It'd be great to get it done as soon as we could. So it could wait to the 2nd of December if we had to, but also happy to entertain other solutions as well. The absolute drop down deadline is the 28th of February next year, but I don't think there's any risk that we're going to that. I suppose the risk is the longer we keep the audit open, then there's always a risk that something will happen that will then need to get reflected in the updated accounts, because you've got that post-balance sheet event period. So that's not saying we want to sign the accounts as soon as we can, but there's always a risk that something may come along the lines that means that actually impacts something that goes back, and we need to review that. So that's why it's always important to close the audit as soon as we can. So I'm not sure if that's helpful. And in terms of the IS19 letter from the Avon Pension Fund, we are hoping to get that within the next few days or week or so.
Perhaps we could ask if members have got any thoughts or comments.
Councillor Simon?
Two thoughts. Firstly, I take it there's no chairman's action power that could be invoked. And second, if we haven't managed to get ourselves a quorum today on an urgent meeting, I'm not convinced we'll be able to do it if we ask for another unscheduled meeting. So if the only significant risk is that of post-balance sheet events, I think a 2-month delay to the beginning of December is probably the practical answer. We can record the conclusions of the non-quorum meetings.
Do you want to come in on that?
It's a matter for members as to whether they want, if they think it's in their interest, to call an early meeting or leave it. And the important bit, as Councillor Simon has said, is that the next meeting needs to be quorate in order to make that decision, because it reputationally it's not great if we keep having in quorum meetings that can't sign these off.
So I would. Can you use your microphone?
Is it possible to change the standing orders by then so that it becomes easy?
Any change in standing orders requires the committee to meet and unanimously approve it. The next meeting is in January.
So I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Simon about deferring it to the 2nd of December, which is already in our diaries, so we can make sure that we actually attend. Okay. Barry.
Chair, I know we can't approve the letter of representation, which is also on the agenda today, but it would also be helpful just to note if any members had, or those members present, if there were any queries in relation to the letter of rep that was here, just in case we can answer any questions then.
So does anybody have any questions about that letter of representation? It seems not. So is the process that we note this for the meeting?
Yeah, I think we've noted the cover report and the audit findings, and we'll adjourn at the last item.
So I'll propose that we adjourn the meeting till December 2nd, where we will approve those accounts.
Could I just make one?
Certainly, yeah.
May just make one quick comment, just to say that, you know, a huge amount of effort has gone in. It's a disappointing result, as I'm sure you can feel, but a huge amount of effort's gone in, both, you know, from the finance team and from the audit team, to kind of get where we are today. And it, you know, had we have been quorate, we would have perhaps been number 1 or 2 local authority in the country to have met that deadline then. So it's even more disappointing perhaps, but I don't think that should take away the credit of the work of both teams in getting us here today, because it is a phenomenal achievement against the backdrop of the challenge of local government audit. So whilst, you know, we'll get there in December, I do think it should count for something.
I'd just like to endorse that and thank Grant Thornton. The North East Somerset Audit Committee were able to sign the accounts off last week, so I think we're one of the ones inside, and that's Grant Thornton as well. They're a different audit partner, so well done to everybody. Thank you.
And yes, I would like to endorse that as well. Thank you very much for the work and effort you put into it, and emails will be sent to members to say that they should be sending either their apologies or confirming attendance. So thank you very much. So I would like to call this meeting to a close. Thank you very much for attending. Have a good afternoon.